Hello and welcome to Breaking Even with Al Paton for round 14, week 3 of the mid-season buys. That'll be 3 down. Still a couple more to go after that, so very interesting times in SuperCoach, and it is the buys, so we know we're dealing with lesser numbers each week, and at the same when it comes to the podcast. So Al Paton here hosting, joined by Chloe Williams. And Chloe, we've had a couple of late outs, but this is what SuperCoaches have to deal with at this time of year.
Yep, so I'm just like that person who's holding your team together throughout the buy period. I'm still here, showing up and keen to talk some SuperCoach today.
Very good news. And yeah, like our teams, I think sometimes you pick people thinking you'll just hang on to them for the buys, but it turns out you actually rely on them for the entire year. But thankfully, I think if we have to do that with you, we'll be fine. Plenty of questions to get into shortly, injuries and all the news as well. Of course, remember to like and subscribe wherever you are listening or watching this on Code Sports YouTube if you're doing that. And of course, don't forget that offer is still available, $1 for the first month for a Code Sports subscription, which includes SuperCoach Plus, which has your buy planner for SuperCoach, has all your projected prices, break-evens, all the things that we need to know during the buys, especially as we try and get those best scores up during our best 18 scoring. And every SuperCoach knows that managing injuries is a key to success. This is the Injury Report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team. Again, plenty of interesting names this week to talk about. Bailey Smith, late withdrawal last week. Nearly every SuperCoach had to deal with that. Didn't train with the main group this week, but we're hoping he'll be okay. They did say he probably only missed the 1 week, so fingers crossed on Bailey, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. Some pretty terrible news out of Richmond, out of the VFL actually, from the Tigers at the weekend. We know Judson Clark did his ACL again. Shocking for him. I was actually keeping an eye on him as a potential rookie over the next couple of weeks because he'd been flying in the VFL. So best wishes for him. And the other one, of course, is Campbell Gray, who was a great trade-in for most of us about a week ago. Lost his spot in the team when Noah Bolter came back. And then he's hurt his knee as well in the VFL. The Tigers saying that's a posterior lateral knee injury. I'm not a physio. I can't tell you what that is, but they say they will put together some timelines later in the week. So to me, that doesn't sound great. I don't think we'll be seeing Campbell Gray for a little while. Some better news. Jason Horne-Francis will be back this week, we think, after missing just a couple of weeks with a hammy. He has a very high break-even, so we'll be talking about that in a second. Sam Durham's out for a couple of weeks, suspended. Might have some flow-on effects for the Essendon midfield. Some people may be hanging on to an Elijah Sada, so I can see he's still putting up some big numbers in the VFL, so there's a chance he might still be there potentially this week. And Noah Anderson copped a huge bump on the weekend from Tom Stewart, who did get cleared by the tribunal, but Anderson has also been cleared of concussion and potential chest injury. So Gold Coast has to buy this week, but Gold Coast saying he'll be fine after that.
Yep, and talking of good news to come out of the Western Bulldogs, Sam Darcy is available this week, which is amazing for SuperCoaches and also just for footy fans to see him back out there.
Yeah, he was so good.
Initially feared to think that we might not see him again this year, but I'm keen to see what he can do coming off that injury. Jack McRae is a test finally after that initial lung injury, so that'll be great for anyone who has held him or anyone looking to potentially bring him back in. Mateus Filippo, though, not so lucky with that calf injury, still down as TBC on the Saints injury report. So if you did go early on him, we know a few people who did. Unfortunately, probably time to part ways. Matt Roberts is a popular pick as well. He was just sick last weekend. Sydney have the bye this week and he should be right to go after that. And Finn Callahan is a test too if you did hold on to him or if you are waiting to swoop on some value later on.
Yeah, I think the Giants are expecting him to play this week. That's a wrap on this week's injury report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. Of course, 4 teams on the bye this week: Collingwood, Richmond, Sydney and Gold Coast. Best 18 scoring. 3 trades for everyone. 4 if you still have a boost. Do you still have a boost, Chloe?
I do still have a boost.
So do I. I don't know how. I don't think I'm going to be able to use it.
I was considering using it this week, but it's really one of those weeks where I could do 1 trade, I could do 4 trades, so I don't know. There's plenty of options that I could do. I might end up using the boost this week or I might just save it, but it feels just like a bit of a waste to have a boost at this point,
I know. I feel like I want to use it, but do I really need to spend 4 trades? But so if you have a boost still, you can do 4 trades this week. And over the buys, Fallen Premo Watch is one of our regular segments every week, and there are some really interesting names on here. I mean, the highest break even in the comp, we're looking at break evens and of course indicating what players will be doing with their prices. And if you've got a really high break even, your price is coming down. Adam Chulor has the highest break even in the comp of 211, but we mentioned Sam Darcy. He's next, 191 break even. So we want to have a look at him when he comes back, but give him a couple of weeks to just get back into the swing of things. And if he's looking all right, he might drop in price. He's $497K now, might get closer to 400,000. And then he could be someone we could look at potentially to bring in the forward line. I did look at the Bulldogs fixture and they've got Richmond in a couple of weeks. So Not sure if the timing will quite line up, but that might be a good week to bring Sam Darcy in. Some of the other high break-evens, Marcus Bontempelli, a lot of us jumped on last week, 164 BE. So, I mean, he didn't quite score to what we were hoping, but he hasn't come down that much, and, he might creep downgrade. He'll get to 600K if you wait another 6 or 8 weeks or something. But I think any time,
he might not. He might just get another score,
any time's a good time to get the Bont if you can. Dane Zorko coming down is interesting. 162 break even for him. Now Jason Horton-Francis, we did mention already, 499,000 coming back in this week. Break even of 155. So the timing will be interesting on him too. Obviously, Port's had their bye, which is really good. Maybe one game, maybe 2 games, and get him down around the low 400s. I think he'll be one that, if you didn't hold him, a lot of people will be keen to bring in and fill that last spot or 2 in their forward lines.
Yeah, I was someone who held him, so that's a bit disappointing for me to see, but that's okay. I think he'll still be, if you did hold him, I think that's still a great option to be able to just slot him back in there. But if you are able to jump onto him on a lower price, then that'll be a great way to finish off your team. Yeah,
and just some other high break-evens to watch, sort of popular players. Lachie Neale, 154. Zach Merritt, 150. Jack McRae, 150 as well. So he's another one in the forward line. 517K, but he might get down to sort of 450, 470 or something like that, and he's another option if you have available slots in the forward line like I do. The problem is, how do you find the money to get Campbell Gray to one of these guys? It's still, know, 300 grand. So that's a problem that we have to figure out, which will be an issue. Some of the questions we'll touch on as well when we get to those. And looking at some of the lower break-evens, guys that you probably want to jump on this week, we know there's a heap of these mid-price bargains all of a sudden have popped up, which could be really handy at this time of year. Colby McKercher went up 60 grand after his huge score on the weekend, but he's still under 400,000 with a break even of 25. So that's still great buying for him. Callum Mills has a break even of 35. Obviously the Swans have the buy, but he's one you might want to save a spot for next week. Jai Caldwell still has a break even in the 50s. 470K for him. Caleb Daniel I brought back in last week, which I was really happy with. Went way better than I thought it would, but I like his role, and obviously North doesn't have a bye anymore. He still has a break even in the 40s, so all these guys very cheap. What about Sam Docherty making an appearance down here on the pod? Break even of 13. He had a 40 a couple of weeks ago, which will go out of his cycle, so this will be the last week you can get him at this sort of price. Didn't go up a lot after his another ton on the weekend, 403,000 in the midfield. Is that somewhere you could go if you don't have a heap of money?
Yeah, I'm definitely considering it. Like all of these guys are great buying, so it's almost hard to choose at this point. They probably won't all work out exactly how you would hope, but some of them definitely will. And I think if he can keep that half-back role, he doesn't really have the upside as someone like a McKercher, but it's still, about 10K difference. So, yeah, I'm definitely tempted because he's just got that consistency if he is playing that role.
Yeah.
He might not get 150, but he could get 100 pretty consistently, I think so.
It definitely has the runs on the board in the past. McKercher, you're going for upside really because he's so exciting. And we watched him last week, like when he's on, that's what he can score. But he has dropped plenty of 60s and 70s in his time as well. He's only in his second year and the role still, touch wood, he's going to play in defence, but that's, we're going off 1 week. Whereas, Doc's just been there, done that for years and years and years.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me, tossing up between the two of them, obviously the upside with McKercher, but even when he was playing that role last year, I'm sure we'll touch on this a bit later on too, but he did have spike games, but he did have some lower games even in that defensive role last year as well. So it's obviously better than having him in the half forward line, but I would still, it's an upside play really. I wouldn't say that I would rely on him for consistency at this point in time, but great to watch.
Yeah, and the thing that I think, looking at some of the questions that keeps coming back in my mind is there's, I think, still 11 rounds to go. So if you're taking a punt on a player with a month to go, that's one thing. But, if you want that guy to hold your spot in your defence or your midfield for half the season virtually, it's worth, how much risk do you want to take over that length of time. The sort of more top-end kind of primos who have good break-evens this week that you might want to jump on. Obviously, Zak Butters is going to be a huge topic because he's dropped to 563K. We're hoping he might get a little bit lower than that, but still that's an amazing price for a guy. He's averaging 121 this year. He had that 53 a few weeks ago when he copped a really heavy tag, but that's about to go out of his system. So this is the last time we'll be able to get him for a price like that. And Nazai Wanganeen-Miller is the other one that's flown under the radar a little bit with the Saints coming off the bye, so perfect time to grab him. He's 507,000. Again, just had one sort of really off game, which is really his only bad game for the year, which is probably the week Tim traded him in, is how these things seem to go. But again, that'll roll out of his cycle this week. So 74 break even. He'll be quite a bit more expensive after this. And he's certainly coming into the bye, he was in the top 6 defenders for the year on averages. So, he's had a fantastic season, and I think he'd be a fantastic pickup. But obviously there's a few other options around this week.
Yeah, it's interesting. He was someone I was looking at a long time ago and didn't have money for. Now that he's the right price, there's people available who are even cheaper when we're desperate for cash. So it'll be interesting. I haven't really considered bringing him in just because I'm a bit strapped for cash, but maybe I can make it work. I'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and again, do you want that spot for Callum Mills next week potentially? So there's a few pieces to juggle, but I do think he's a really good buy if you can get there. Now we've got a new segment this week. The rookie roulette has been retired, I think, because unfortunately some of us are still relying on rookies, but we don't want to be doing too much more of that for the rest of the year. But this segment is called Rogue Traders, and it's really based on, I spotted last week that 53 people had traded in Tom Atkins from Geelong, and I thought, what are these people thinking? Like, we talk about all these big names, your Bonds and your Butters, and then 53 people go and trade in Tom Atkins, and he scores 145. So
why can I not be that lucky?
People know what they're doing out there. People have different ways of playing Supercoach. So if you scroll down, look in your Supercoach Plus, there's you can see all these trading stats, and you can find some really interesting names and try and get a bit of an insight into what some of these people are playing at with their unique and sort of obscure names that they're trading into. And I did notice that 20 people saw enough in Orazio Fantasia's first game of the year, and he scored 42, but 20 people are trading him in this week. And we looked at Jai Caldwell, who I think is still potentially a trade in if you're looking for someone in the midfield this week, but 7 people are actually trading him out to get to Zak Butters. So I guess if he's your path to Zak Butters, maybe that kind of makes sense. One Supercoach is trading him to get Tom De Koning.
Right.
Must be some kind of flex play. And one is trading him to Darcy Fort, which is fairly out there. But I did look up Darcy Fort's score. He scored 135 last week, and he has a break-even of -4. But
shout out to Patch, actually. He was mentioning Darcy Fort back in the preseason, I think. So
I probably wouldn't recommend that. But as we said, people like to do their own thing, and sometimes it can pay off.
Speaking of things that I wouldn't recommend, I found that there is one person trading Bont to Luke Parker. So if you're watching this, I would love to know the reasoning behind that. Luke Parker had a good week last week, but in all due respect, he's not the Bont. And then we also have 10 people trading Finn Callaghan to Tom Green. So once again, if you are watching this, Finn Callaghan is most likely back this week. So please don't do that one, I would say. But, if that's your plan, I'm not going to stop you. You might want to go rogue. This is what this is all about. But I would probably say save that trade.
Yeah, I agree with that. But as you say, we like people to do their own thing.
Exactly.
When back your gut. That's what we love in Supercoach.
Some people might look at what I'm trying to do sometimes and think it's a bit rogue. So
True. I did joke Caleb Daniel back this last week, which is a bit random. But the questions are, of course, the main part of the show. So don't forget to keep an eye out for the tweet and get your questions in each week. More interesting ones this week. We did have one that's sort of not directly related to any of the games this week, but reminded me of something that I admit I'd pretty much completely forgotten about. Someone asking what is happening with this Essendon Gold Coast extra game that was sort of left over from the start of the season. And I think the answer to that is that we still don't really know, do we? We think it's going to be played after the round 24, the rest of round 24, maybe in that bye before the finals. But I guess the important thing for Supercoach is whenever they play it, it's not going to count towards Supercoach.
Yeah, that's the main thing, really.
Would that affect, if you were potentially trading in anyone from those teams? I mean, Gold Coast has the bye this week anyway.
Well, I think at this point, I wouldn't really think it matters. I mean, if it was counting for points, obviously everyone would have to make room for all of these Essendon and Gold Coast players, but it's just kind of business as usual.
Yeah, I think so. But, we're obviously just waiting on the AFL, but hopefully they'll announce it sometime soon. I actually had pretty much forgotten about that game after the drama in opening round. But James has asked a quick one. Kenny has some advance on his next year's salary cap to try and make some trades this year. And unfortunately, no, you can't do that. But probably wouldn't advise it either. I mean, it's a bit like borrowing off your super. And
you'll want it again next year.
Yeah, you'll come a time when you'll really want that money. But the big topic of the week, as we mentioned, Zak Butters. So, to me, when I first went into the trades, pretty much on Monday night this week after lockout, you think, this is one of the easiest trades of the year. I can trade a rookie down to Zach Johnson from Essendon, who's on the bubble, looks like a really, fingers, touch wood, where rookies have been pretty rough this year, but Angus Clark was okay last week and Zach Johnson has been scoring pretty well. So you think we can trade him in, make 150 grand or something off another rookie and then trade Levi Ashcroft to Butters. That seems pretty straightforward. Ashcroft break-even's up over the 100 this week. So done and dusted. But then is it quite that simple? Because what does that mean for the rest of my team? How much money have I got left? How many trades have I got left? So people were asking some questions about that. Matthew saying Butters or Sarong. Mark saying Butters or Sarong. So are there other players you could potentially get instead of him? I mean, of those guys that are thrown up there, I think at the price,
Yeah.
Butters is clearly the standout this week.
Yeah, I would just say Butters this week, pretty much. Just lock it in. Because his price is pretty much the same as theirs, give or take a couple, well, a fair bit, but 20 grand either way, around about. So I would just get Butters because he's been amazing this year. So you'd love to have him in your team for the run home. I know that there's people who might not be able to afford him and are finding creative ways to get around that, but if you can get there, I would get there ahead of anyone, whether it be Libba, whether it be Sarong, whether it be another Premo mid or defender. I would just be getting Butters.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Sarong, 545K, so he's slightly cheaper, but, we know people who around in the office and, in the group chats who have Sarong, and he's just been very frustrating this year. Like, if you like consistency, he scores sort of anywhere between 102 and 107 pretty much every week, but, we know Butters, the ceiling that he has, so
I think it's easy to forget as well when you have a player scoring around 100, you look at it and you think, oh, this is great. But if you've got Butters scoring 140 in both those weeks, that's a whole 80 total points you've missed out on. So, I would just target the big dog. And
we love what Libba has done this year, but I definitely wouldn't be bringing him in this week. Last week he dropped to 74, and the interesting thing was that Adam Treloar was back in the team. And you look at the one other game that Libba dropped a poor score earlier in the season, and that was the other game that Treloar played.
Yeah.
So his CBAs will write down.
Matt Kennedy was safe after all.
Yeah, exactly. Libba seems to be the one, which is maybe a surprise.
Maybe they'll swap it around, but for now, it definitely all signs are pointing towards potentially reduced scoring output from Libba. Yeah,
if you got him, hopefully, like you say, the magnets do move, and it's not him every week. But I definitely wouldn't be looking to bring him in. And on the still on the Zak Butters question, so question here, which is pretty much exactly what happened to me. Suddenly realising while I can afford Butters this week, then a 23rd Premo is unlikely unless I go super cheap. So this is exactly sort of my situation where I could get Butters, that trade easy, but then after that I'm looking at, I've got 2 or 3 rookies still on my forward line especially, which is, it's like Archer Day Wicks. I don't want him in my having to play him on field once the buys are over, and this would use up all my money, so I don't have any other cash to even get him to a Horn Francis or something in a few weeks. So are there other ways around it? I mean, Colby McKercher is the value pick, I think, that most people would be considering instead. So as we said, went up 60 grand last week. It'd be great if he was still 330, but 390 is still a good price. It's a lot less than Butters. Could you potentially stick him in, he's a defender mid, and try and, hope that he can go close to matching Zak?
I don't think he'll go close to matching Zak, but, if you don't have the money to finish your team, even though I was just saying that like Zak's points are going to be hard to match, when you look at your total team, say it is like a 100 compared to a 140, if you're then able to get another decent mid-price player, it can balance out. But also those mid-price players, as we always say, are often mid-price for particular reasons, especially at this time of year. So most of the time, role issues or injury issues. So I would be careful with the mid-prices, but if you don't have a choice, you don't really have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, the math sort of comes down to, Butters maybe scoring 140 in the midfield plus Archer Day Wicks getting, 30 if I'm lucky in the forward line. There's 170 put together versus maybe Colby and Horn Francis.
Yeah.
You probably are ahead.
You would probably be ahead with that.
But it's a bit of, calculating where the money's going to be coming from. Because
you've
got a couple of weeks
long-term plan
to wait for Horn Francis to maybe come down a little bit. And in that time, does... Luke Pedlar has a sudden spike game and
that's
goes
the
up
thing with those
150K
rookies as well. You just never know when the spike game's coming.
A couple of the other cheap ones that people are looking at, which, you could potentially get a Butters and one of these guys this week, which would be a great result. We talked about Docherty. What about Ben Keys? Great last week, 120, scored 99, 106 and 120 in the last 3 games. The week before that, he scored 8. I'm not really sure what happened there. I think Keys, he sort of tends to do this every year, doesn't he? He'll bob up and have a purple patch where he sort of scores a bit like a Premo, but he's, like you said, he's a classic mid-pricer that then he'll go back to scoring his 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking to buy him now, it's probably the worst possible time because you haven't jumped on to get those scores and get the value as well. So if you do jump on now, he could just be going back down the other end of the roller coaster. But no, he's been playing well. I like Ben Keys. I've owned him before, so I probably wouldn't trade him in now though, but maybe in draft if you're looking for an option in draft, or if you were really desperate to find a value pick, you could ride the roller coaster. But I think we already have enough players that have been a bit of a roller coaster this year. So.
Yeah, that's true. And the Crows haven't had their buy yet, have they? So
no, not yet.
How much do you factor that in? I think Jai Caldwell is still a good price, but he's only going to, you'll get him for 1 or 2 weeks and then he has a buy.
Yeah.
And then Callum Mills is the other one who has a buy this week, so you're not going to bring him in, but are you potentially trying to hold a spot. So it has to be in defence or maybe flex to try and bring him in next week, because one advantage he has is, like, Colby went up 60 grand, even Docherty went up a bit. Mills didn't go up at all because he's only played the 2 games. So after his bye, he's still at 357, which is, cheaper than all of these guys. Is he someone that we sort of want to have a spot for next week?
Definitely, I think so. He looked good. So, yeah, I've got Roberts at the moment. I don't know whether to kind of move Roberts on this week just to bank some extra points while he's on his bye and then bring Mills in the week after. But whether I have Mills as my D6 or whether I have him as my flex, I haven't quite decided yet, but he was in my long-term plan that I spent so many hours making last week. So I can definitely fit him in, which is a win, because I think he's a good option to help finish off our teams.
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of the consideration for me too with Butters, that if I get Butters, that sort of locks off, that end of my team. My defence is already finished, and then probably flex would be the only way I could get him, which wouldn't be the worst.
Yeah.
But I would probably prefer long-term to have a DPP there. I sort of thought Horn Francis would be the perfect flex for the run home when he comes back in.
For the price drop.
Yeah, so it's a matter of weighing that up. But now Stephen's asked a question, which is, again, I was mulling this over last night. Is there, try and think outside the box. Is there another way around this? So his question is, I've got 6 Primos on the round 16 bye, including Ashcroft, Dunkley and Neale, meaning he'd only have 18 available that week. So he's considering trading one of those guys out, and he's thinking Ashcroft or Neale if he had to trade one of them this week. And I did think, is this a way to potentially, still get Horn Francis, still get Neale?
I did see your tweet last night about this.
Could I still get Butters if I trade out Neale to him? I mean, is that going crazy with trade starting to run a little bit low?
Well, it is a little bit, but I think that there's a method to the madness. What would your midfield look like if you did that?
Oh, it'd look good. Butters instead of Neale.
So if it still looks good, then I think it's definitely an option.
And I think those round 16 buy is a factor. Like, people,
I think it is.
Maybe are sleeping on that a little bit. Once we get there, Brisbane having the buy. I mean, Stephen's not the only one who's going to have 2 or 3 Brisbane Primos in their team. We've got Zorko as well in the back line. Then you've got Essendon off. You've got Geelong off. So there's Bailey Smith and the Giants as well. So the Nick Martins, your Zach Merritts, those guys aren't going to be playing. If you're going to be, really hard hit in that round, maybe there is, swapping a Neale to Butters, you get an extra, 120 points, say, that week, whereas Neale, obviously, I'm getting nothing from him. So, when you start adding up the total points, it does, I'm warming to it, but it's just the question of, in round 17, am I going to think, why did I waste a trade? I could have just had Lachie Neale, who's perfectly fine, and still had that trade for when, Max Gawn misses a month and I can't do anything about it. Yeah,
that's true. It's definitely a bit of a risk, but, in terms of actual Neale or Butters, I think it would still be a win to have Butters over Neale, like, once you get to round 17. And then, it depends what that cash allows you to then do in other areas of your team. But, obviously it's good to have some trades for injuries too. So it's a bit of a fine line, but I definitely think it's worth planning ahead, especially during the buys. Make sure that you've got enough players playing that week. SuperCoach Plus is great for that. Blacks out all the players who aren't going to be there and makes you feel really scared. So then, if it isn't looking great, it would be the perfect time to jump off now just so you can maximise that trade. You might not want to do the trade, but if you do it now, you'll get maximum value from it. So being able to get Butters at his cheapest price.
Yeah, that's right. So, if you're going to get him, now's the time. And I mean, the thing about Neale too, there's always a danger of, I'm sort of trying to talk myself into this, but Neale has a break even of 154 this week and he plays GWS. So does he cop a Toby Bedford tag?
Yeah.
The week after they have Geelong, Ocean Mullen potentially, and then they have the bye. So maybe this is the week to get off Lachie Neale. And like, even comparing him with Will Ashcroft, Lachie Neale has averaged 104.8 for the year. Will has averaged 103.6. There's not a huge difference there, and Lachie is the one that the tags go to. He probably has the highest ceiling as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's an obvious call between those two. I've really loved Will. I suppose maybe the expectations aren't as high, so I really enjoyed having him in my team. But I don't know. Maybe Lachie Neale. Even last week, I don't think he was really tagged. Struggled to get to a 90.
He
missed a
didn't
goal.
do much in the last quarter.
Yeah, he had a shot at goal. If he'd kicked the goal, he probably would have got 110. But
centered himself and then
missed it, and as pretty much everybody did for Brisbane. But I'm thinking this could actually be a play. So
I think I like it. I think I'll give it my tick of approval.
Ooh,
I think I like it, but I do like to go a bit rogue. So back to the,
Yeah,
this could end up on next week's road traders.
Yeah, good, that's true. All right, we're going to better get into a few other topics too for the week. Hawksy asking, with my trades, yes, 2 forward spots remaining, but apart from Nick Martin and Luke Jackson, no one there really jumping out at him. And I get what he's saying there. And both those guys you think probably gone, although the Phantom did bring in Nick Martin last week. He's asking, is there anybody else, any pods we can see coming out, or is it a matter of waiting for Horn Francis and or Sam Darcy? And the only names that I could come up with were Brent Daniels is one that maybe slipped under the radar last week, came back for his first game in about 6 weeks or so. He's only 401,000, scored 83 in just 59% tog. I think he might have started as the sub, but he came on reasonably early. So I actually really like him given his scoring last year, but the Giants have the bye in round 16, so you'll get a couple of games out of him and then he's gone. So not ideal, but he's one you could consider. And the other one is Shea Bolton. Looking at Freo and St Kilda players coming off the bye, which we haven't talked about a lot, maybe a Sarong, Wanganeen Miller a type, but yeah, Shea is not as cheap as he was when quite a few people jumped on a few weeks ago, but 485k is still, I think, a good price for him. But in terms of those top end forwards, I couldn't really find any others, and this is why I thought Caleb Daniel actually is, he's up in the sort of top 7 or 8 for averages and still a pretty good price. So yeah, why not?
Yeah, the Caleb Daniel pick is good. Like I feel sad because I traded him out thinking that Ryan Marrick would be my finished forward line, but that wasn't to be. So Bolton is a good option as well. I think Daniel and Bolton are probably the most reliable. I do like Brent Daniels though. He kind of went on a bit of a run at the end of last year.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
That bye is a little pesky, so not ideal. But for me, I'm hoping that it'll be Sam Darcy that will be able to come in at a cheaper price. I just think the timing of it, where the Dogs are on the ladder, you don't want to put too much pressure on him still at this point of his career, but I'm sure he will be wanting to come in and make an impact. So hoping that he can recapture that form that we saw from the start of the year after he drops in price a little bit, of course. But
no, I'm in a bit of a tricky situation with 2 rookies that I need to fix in the forward line. But if you've only got the one, I think you can afford to wait. I mean, this is sort of a question without notice because it's not on the run sheet here, but do you have a position on, do you think you're safe having, 22 premium guns on your field and then the 23rd, knowing that the 23rd score does drop off each week with flex, can be, potentially a rookie or someone, a lot riskier? Or do you want to try and get 23 premiums given, there's always an injury or something happens that, you want to, if that score drops out, you want to have someone good there to replace him?
Yeah, I'm a bit on the fence, to be honest, which probably doesn't help. But for me personally, I'll probably end up with someone like a Kane McAuliffe there, which is handy because he's not the worst, not the best. I mean, he's doing pretty well at the moment, which is great.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Like him or a Sheldrick, I'd be happy with that. Yeah,
or you can also go a bit lower than that if you just have a rookie who is playing, let's just say an Angus Clark or a Zach Johnson, who are also going well at the moment, touch wood. But yeah, sometimes their scores could be bigger. Like say this week, Zach Johnson almost got above someone like a Chad Warner who can sometimes drop a low score. So then that can be handy with your flex. But I think the benefit of having someone decent enough as your 23rd player, a rookie that is at least reliable, is that even if you have to make a few moves using DPP in and out of your flex, if there's an injury in another line, probably any line except the rucks really, you can kind of cover that as well as using your flex, if that makes sense. If you've got at least one good rookie on your bench somewhere and one in as your flex player, you can swap them around if someone does get injured and still field a full team. So I think with flex, it does help that you could have a rookie in that spot. I think obviously there would be a benefit to having an extra Premo there, but then at the same time, you're spending more money for a score that could just drop out, whereas other people might be getting by on an 80 rookie score every week. So I think either works really.
I mean, I think ideally at 23 or, people earlier in the year were talking about getting 24 Primos. I mean, that sounds amazing, but who has the money for that this year? It's been a really hard year for rookies especially. And, we're talking off air that, maybe we thought a Campbell Gray or someone like that would be ideal in that spot. And then, of course, he only lasts a week and he's gone. Is there anyone else around at the moment? You did mention a name before he came on air that, again, maybe a little bit of a rogue
Yes, this
trade,
could be me this week, actually.
Yeah, I think if you could stick a rookie there who could, especially if they're maybe DPP, they've got a good role and they can score your 70s and 80s, that'd be ideal in that sort of, your last forward spot or last defence potentially.
Yeah, so the rookie that I'm looking at is Tyrell Dewar from West Coast. So he's a forward mid. His scores, he's still in the 176.2K. So his scores haven't been amazing this year. I just bring up his season stats. So we've had some low ones. More recently, in round 11 he did score 6. So I'm not promising anything here. But then a 51 and a 90, he seems to have absorbed some of that half-back role, although obviously we might see a Tom McCarthy debut this week, which would be handy for super coaches, but maybe not for this pick in particular. But I am looking at flicking Campbell Gray to him in my forward line. Pretty similar price. Not really making any money out of Gray though, which, you know, that's not really the best in a time where we're not making too much money, but I'm hoping that he can make just enough money that when I want to do a final upgrade, hopefully I've got trades left to do a final upgrade a bit later down the line, somewhere in the round 20 or above weeks, that hopefully he can make just enough money to get me to that upgrade, or worst case, he is playing most weeks. So it's better to just have someone who, you know, looks like they're going to play. Like, even that's the thing with like a Luke Pedler, is at least like it looks like for now he's going to play, fingers crossed. So I just think if you can have someone in that spot, they might not be scoring amazing scores, but if they're playing, it's better than someone who is.
I mean, I'd rather have him than, who have I got? Archer Day Wicks, who's you know, borderline to, he was the sub last week, scored 20-something. And, very much on the fringe of that team. And obviously Cooper Simpson, I think, still sitting on my bench. He's not coming back anytime soon. If you've got Campbell Gray, as we talked about with the injuries, I think it'll be a while if we see him again.
Yeah.
Pedler, hopefully keeps his spot. I think he had 3 kicks last week. As we talked about that third game curse for rookies. It's just been a shocker. At least one of them was a goal, but hopefully he keeps his spot. But it's pretty shaky at that bottom end. So if you could find someone, if we think we can trust.
He's quite expensive though, I will just say that.
I mean, kick-ins last 2 weeks, he's taken 9 kick-ins over the last 2 games, and Marich has had 0 in that time. So, they do seem to like him back there.
Yeah.
Minnie McQualter, though, what's he doing? He did come out this week
him as well, so I think they like him. They want to play him.
Okay.
But it just depends whether that's the role that sticks for him. And again, he played really well against Richmond actually in the preseason. Is when I he first got my attention. But I'm mainly just thinking, well, he could play, he could make money. But at least, so he wouldn't be my flex player though. He would just be a scoring rookie. I suppose that worst case scenario, injuries, he could become my flex player. Like the DPP really helps as well. So,
but if you've got another gun in flex, that doesn't matter. Then effectively that's your best 22 and your 23rd player is, your F6 or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, if it's TDK in flex or even a Mills, I suppose ideally a DPP for flexibility. But I think that's fine. So I think that's a viable option. Talking about sideways trays, which we are a little bit this week. Daniel saying Zorko to Naz sideways. So Zorko's been a bit off the boil lately, as Dossie told Phantom, his worst pick in his team. He's at the start of the year and he's been great, but I think he's had some pretty serious attention from sort of defensive forwards the last couple of rounds and hasn't been able to really break through it. But is that worthwhile? I mean, it's just the question of, how many trades do you have left? And I think I'd probably just stick it out with Zorko. But, I mean, in this case, Daniel's saying that gives him enough coin to get from Hewitt to Callum Mills next week just in the one trade. Yeah.
Well, I think that, you do have to look at it in that kind of long-term perspective. So Hewitt to Mills in one trade next week and then should still allow him to complete his team 23 with 5 trades left. So I think if you're in that position, 5 trades left is probably where I'll almost end up after next week. Which is not really what I plan to do, but I think at this point you'll take it. And the Zorko to Naz is only one trade, and then it saves you the trade Hewitt to Mills. So I feel like you can justify that. I think that you can justify that.
Yeah, I really like Naz. I mean, I think Zorko
don't encourage
will be fine,
trading Primos, and I think Zorko will come good, but if it opens up other opportunities for you, I think just based on such limited cash gen this year, we've gotten ourselves into this position where we all have to go a bit crazy considering things that we maybe wouldn't have in the past just to get that last bit of money. And
I have to be consistent, and I said that Neale maybe now's the time to get off him before their buy. And again, Zorko's similar scenario. He's got a buy in round 16 and when we could have some problems, and Naz obviously no more buy. So that's another tick potentially for that. AJ asking, get Butters this week and trade Roberts. So that's the other way, I guess. A lot of people might be thinking of getting Mills in, potentially trading Roberts, or do you trade Roberts now that he's got his bye? What are your feelings on Matt Roberts? Obviously illness last week, but his scoring has been a bit down on what we were getting early in the year.
It wasn't. I've never felt the need to trade him before. Now he is in my team, just plodding along with 90s, 80s. It's never been enough. I've had bigger issues, but this week I am looking at him thinking I don't need the extra number this week. But if you need the extra number this week with him on his bye, that could be what pushes you over the line. But then, also knowing that Mills is going to come back. Obviously, we saw Mills play really well, but that was without Roberts. So is Roberts also going to affect Mills as much as Mills is going to affect Roberts? I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I've been playing around with trading him out just to bank some cash, going down to a McKercher kind of type.
Yeah, okay.
Bank some cash for next week so I can round out my team a bit. But I don't really, as I said, I don't necessarily trust McKercher. So
would that be your boost?
It would be my boost. Actually, I could do it in 3, but it would mean no Dewar. So I don't know. I have to pick.
No, I think I like Dewar.
Yeah, me too. So, I could hold Roberts for one more week. I don't need the number, but then it's like after that, well, then what do I do with him?
Yeah,
he's not convincing, but he's also not. Yeah, I
isn't
think
that annoying?
The 2 games in a row of him not playing just kind of makes you feel a bit more justified to trade him. But I'll have to play around my long-term plan and see what happens if I do remove Roberts or keep Roberts and which one leaves me in a better position. But I would say if you feel like you need to trade him, I wouldn't argue against it, but also we are looking to try and finish our team. So
yeah, I mean, to me, I just feel like I haven't got enough trades to be toying around with that. But I could see it. I could see where you can make a case for it.
You've got the trades. Some people have a lot of trades. Let us know how many trades you have left, because I think I've heard some numbers floating around.
Did we just walk in here and the producer told us he has 19 trades left? What is happening?
19? Oh, can I have some?
Yeah, I don't know how that works. We'll see if we can actually trade trades. That'd be good.
That'd be good, actually.
Bring that into the game.
Yeah, don't know how it would work, but.
Final question on Colby McKercher again, saying, does having Sheasel make Colby a more enticing pick, as at least one of them should play at halfback? The old handcuff technique. And I mean, I got Caleb Daniel as well, so just pick all of those North guys.
You got Sheasel and Daniel?
Yep.
And are you looking at McKercher?
Yes.
Well, we know it's a good role. Someone's got to take it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really want any of them playing at half forward, but it seems like Clarko likes to sort of experiment with that. But I mean, we saw last week at North 1, it worked for, Sheasel had his best score since I think round 4. He actually played a lot of midfield.
Yeah, I was looking at that. It was good.
He was pretty quiet in the first half where he's more in the forward line, but then he went into the actual centre square, and that's where he got a lot of his points in the last quarter. So happy for him to stay there. Colby to float around half back. Didn't seem to hurt Caleb Daniel scoring at all, which I was a bit nervous about when I realised what was going on. Caleb's still taking all the kick-ins, so he had a big game as well. So, I think it's fine to get all those guys, especially given North doesn't have a bye anymore.
Yeah. No, I think it's fine. As you said, someone's got to have the good role, so you'll get the point somewhere. But, I mean, Sheasel, and he's able to score as a mid, so it's more Colby that I would have the question mark over still, just because Daniel's going to score off the back line. Sheasel can score anywhere but in the forward line. I'm not as sold, but I'm still looking at bringing him in. So
yeah, it's just that upside is he's just when he's there and scoring. I mean, I suppose we probably should just mention his good game. He scored 2 tons this year in 12 games, and they were against Richmond and West Coast. So slight asterisks, but
there was a bit. There was at Bunbury as well. So
yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm not sure what the
I don't know how much. I don't know if it has any effect at all, but it is worth mentioning, I guess. Yeah,
and before we'll wrap things up there, but I think I'll back him in. But I did. Yeah, it's 11 weeks. It's a long time. Can we trust Clarko for 11 weeks?
I don't think I can after what he's already put me through this year, to be honest. Being a Sheasel and once a Daniel owner who wishes that I still had him. Yeah,
it's a good question. We'll wrap up just with a quick look at potential captains for the weekend. I haven't done a heap of research on this as yet, but if you look at the Sunday games, we've got Max Gawn coming up against Port Adelaide, which is, of course, your man, Dante Visentini.
One more week, Dante.
Jordan Sweet did have a massive game in the Sample, so he could potentially come back in.
204 Supercoach points,
yeah, something like
that.
He scored top 200. And then in the last game of the round, the Blues playing West Coast, is that right?
Yep.
So that is the Tom de Koning, if you brought him in last week potentially, or still have him versus poor old Matty Flynn, who I thought he actually did a reasonable job last week. Sort of held his own against Cherry for about a half.
I was freaking out at half time. He was on about 79 or something thereabouts, and I'd traded him out, and I was thinking, what have I done?
And Cherry was only on about that too. It was pretty even. And then I think
he finished on about 79.
Yeah, and Cherry finished on 150. Yeah. So poor old Matty Flynn, he did his best, but I'm not sure what he's going to do with TDK against. That was a bit. I thought it was a bit mean almost watching poor old Todd Goldstein. The agoing Todd Goldstein was just getting thrown around by TDK.
He's been doing props to him. He's been holding up well, old Goldie. But
pretty disrespectful. But it's going to be some massive scores there.
Benefited from that. But I think DeConing got about 118. I haven't fact checked this, but I'm pretty sure he got around 118, 115, something like that last time. Callum Carlton played West Coast, but that was against Bailey Williams, actually, I remember, because I had Flynn, was hoping to see him named to play. This was gather round against De Koning, the first time I had Flynn this year, and he wasn't named. So that was against Bailey Williams, and De Koning didn't necessarily pull out a 140 like he did last week, but he would be hoping to find himself in some form too with everything going on with his contract. So I'm thinking that could be a good captain option for me.
Yeah,
no, I don't have Gawn.
I don't have TDK,
scary.
but yeah, I think I would definitely be looking at that. I mean, Cherry just averaging 150 basically, so you can't go wrong. Comes up against Darcy/Jackson this week, so
interesting.
Slightly tougher matchup, but he's scoring so well, probably not going to matter. But I'll dig into those numbers and keep an eye on the socials. We'll have our top captain picks later in the round. But that's all the questions this week. Chloe, thanks for joining us in one of the tricky buy rounds. But I was going to say, we're halfway through, nearly over the hump when it comes to the buys. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what my team looks like post-buys, but happy to be here to figure it all out in the meantime.
This long-term planning that we did, there was always a point where I thought, well, I'll just make a couple of trades and then I'll just sit tight and not trade through the buys. And I haven't, every week something happens and I can't do it. But I'm going to have to soon because trades are getting worryingly low.
Yeah, I mean, touch wood, but so far so good with my long-term plan for the most part. But yeah, we still have a few more weeks until it's finished. So we'll hold on to our hats and wait and see.
Exactly. Thank you for coming in. Thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned for the live show when the teams come out on Thursday night at 6:30. Matt Forrest and myself will go through all of that live, or you can catch up, of course, later on the Friday morning. But until then, happy super coaching.